Welcome to Ask Earl Anything. This is the show where your questions make the show. If I don't have questions, I don't have a show. Today I'm taping this show from Studio B. This is something that's seen on a lot of my videos. This is another part of my studio. This is a special little isolation booth. My studio is basically a 3-car garage converted into a recording studio. So this is the 3rd car garage. Originally there was no studio in here. When I first built the studio, it was only in the 2-car garage section. Then we popped a door in there and we built this room. And it's actually a small little room. I think the size dimensions are somewhere like 9 by, I don't know, maybe 9 by 11 or 12. It's not a square room, but it's been a hard room to get it to sound good. And that's part of the whole thing with the acoustics of a studio. And originally this was going to be my wife's, Mrs. Hammer's, hangout. She was going to hang out with me because we call this place the cave for me. I get lost over here. It's detached from my house. It houses my office and the recording studio, and it's off the pool. We have a pool. It's Florida, and people have pools in Florida. It came with the house. Truthfully, I wish I didn't have a pool. That's a whole nother discussion point. Do you need a pool? I don't swim enough to really say I want a pool. But with that said, Studio B was created because my wife at one point thought she was going to hang out here, but there's no windows in here and I can't see her hanging out in this place. I have a really nice hangout in my studio, in my office area. We have a little kitchen area, a little couch area, a desk area for my work. So, and it's all the leftover furniture from the house that we buy new furniture and we put the old furniture out here. So I have a great little studio lounge set up in the studio too. Now my studio is just for me and people that I want to share my studio with. Every once in a while I get a recommendation for a client, or somebody will send me some work and I'll do some session work for them remotely. I'm not actively out there looking for booking studio time all the time. My day job pays the bills, so to speak. But I have worked on a lot of projects in this studio. And Studio B became the place to have a second drum kit set up. And about 2 years ago, I guess, I bought a snake to come through this wall to the other studio and keep mics permanently set up. So this is my secondary miking system in here in Studio B. And the kit that's set up in here today is the kit that's going to be our topic for my gear question. My question about my gear, the story behind the gear. And today's story behind the gear section is going to be the story of the concert tom kit, the Pearl fiberglass concert tom kit. Couple other things, couple of shout outs. Today's shout out, you know, I hadn't given it a lot of thought, but I like to do a shout out each day. I'm going to give you 2 shout outs. I'm going to give you 2 shout outs today. So let me think. I'm going down my list of people, and I have given me questions today. And one of the guys that gave me questions today is going to be my shout out this week. My shout out this week is going to be Spiro Drums. He's a new subscriber. Spiro Drums plays a lot of different covers. He does some live covers from what I remember. And he has a question for me this week. So check out Spiro Drums. Seems like a good player. I enjoy when something new comes up from him. So give him a check him out. And another person I wanted to announce was John J.R. Robinson now has a YouTube channel. And you all know that I interviewed John J.R. Robinson this past summer. Took a couple drum lessons with him. And go show him some love. It's not going to take him very long to get enough YouTube viewers, I'm sure, but I figured I'll throw a few his way today. When I joined, he had like 380 something subscribers. So give him some love and welcome him to the YouTube community. This is the new thing, guys. Let me say something. I watched a YouTube video, and over the past couple weeks, and it was a guy that's pretty famous here on YouTube. I'm not going to say his name, but he's from Florida. I'll say that. That'll give you enough of a clue, I think, too. And he basically was complaining that the YouTube model has kind of changed, that when it first started, it was a lot about people wanting to take lessons, and there was a place to build lesson businesses, and that's where your Mike Johnsons and your Drumios, and there's a bunch of other guys that have started YouTube channels doing drum lessons and have made quite a living from it. And this guy was one of the guys making a living off this. But he was lamenting about the new Insta drummers and everybody just wanting to watch guys with chops and watch guys that play certain songs, and they don't really want to watch drum lessons. And I think the drum lesson space is also getting a little bit crowded. Everybody's doing drum lessons to some extent, and there's a lot of people trying to break into that space. And I have to tell you something, trying to get subscribers in this new YouTube world is tough. Trying to get views is even tougher. I've noticed viewership going down on certain videos, even though I post a lot of videos. And no complaints here, guys. Thank you all that watch my videos. I have no complaints. But I just thought it was interesting listening to him, who was complaining about pretty much not having viewers, the amount of viewers. He has a lot of subscribers and not getting the viewership. And I think the YouTube drum community novelty has worn off. And one of the reasons I think is part of that, besides Instagram, where Instagram is like, you don't have to spend any time to get a little bit of satisfaction about watching a drummer. You watch him for like 5 seconds or 10 seconds or, maybe a minute if they post a minute clip. You know what I mean? And then you watch them and it's over with. You can like it or not like it or move on or whatever. So the Insta world of drumming is like, it's just little sound bites of nothing. You get lots of chops. The ones with the most chops wins in Instagram world. But guys that like YouTube usually like a little more than just the chop things. They like the songs. But even that's changing, you know what I mean? It's changing in this new world. And I think another part of filling up the space is the pro drummers and the pro musicians that are out there now. There's a lot of pro level musicians and drummers that are now starting to show up on Instagram. And truthfully, would you rather watch me or John Robinson? I'd rather watch John Robinson if he's putting some good content up that I've never seen before. This is the new world. There's a lot of people in this space trying to vie for the views of young drummers, and truthfully, it's a little different than it was 3 years ago. It's a lot different than it was 10 years ago when it was a wide open frontier, and if you jumped in at the right time, you could end up having a couple, you could have 1 million subscribers like Cinna. I just saw Cinna today. I haven't watched a Cinna video in a long time. Not a subscriber, I'll be honest. That's why I don't watch her videos, to be honest. But she came up for some reason, and she was talking on camera and talking about some of the new stuff she was doing, and she's grown up a little bit since I started watching some of her videos, and we saw her videos. She's got 1 million viewers. She's got 1 million subscribers. She's made a little franchise for herself, and there was a possibility of doing that. But the new drum cover world, not so much, guys. And if I was doing this for money, I'd be out of luck. You know what I mean? If I was doing it to feed a drum lesson business, I'd be out of luck. The reason I do YouTube is for fun, and I will tell you, it does have perks where people find me, and occasionally I get to play on a song, or I get asked to collaborate with somebody or do something that way, and I have a few of those. Matter of fact, I'm supposed to do one of those this weekend, another collaboration. But the truth of the matter is, the YouTube drumming world, you're really doing it to have a place where you can have your bio, your scrapbook of what you've done, and you can show people that you can play. So it's like your resume online. And that's the way I look at my YouTube channel. And if people want to see if I can play certain styles, I have lots of different styles I play. They can say, oh yeah, he can play, he can cut that. Yeah, I think he might be able to cut that gig. Oh yeah, he can do that. Some of us in the YouTube world specialize in the things that we do best, and that's all we do. And others of us, like me being a drummer growing up in the 70s, I was taught that if I was going to play gigs, I had to play all styles of music, and I better show that I can play all styles of music. So I did everything from playing 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, right up to pop music of the day in the 80s when I had a wedding band and I was playing all the music of that period. And I learned how to play all those different things. And now as time's gone on, I probably have lacked the 2010s into the 2020s pop music. I've kind of lost a little bit of that. Not that I couldn't cop it if I needed to, except for in the Christian realm. I've stayed up on the worship music. And I've been playing as a worship drummer for actually 40-something years now. So I have quite a catalog of Christian music that I go back to and playing in churches and stuff. But I don't think I'm a pop drummer of today, and I don't feel comfortable with Katy Perry or that stuff. I mean, not that I couldn't probably make up something, but I'm more of a groove head, and I really enjoy 70s music and 80s music, and I enjoy playing on stuff that's fresh and new ears in a studio environment where I'm asked to create. That's what always turns me on. So anyhow, my shout outs, Spiro Drums, John J.O. Robinson. That's the state of YouTube. I see it at this point in time. For me, it's just YouTube is my online resume of my playing ability. People want to find me, they find me. If people want to use me, they use me. If people want to ask me to do a session, they ask me to do a session. If they want to collaborate with me and I want to collaborate with them, I will collaborate. It all depends on what I want to do. I've tried to make this a varied channel. I had a time where I was trying to do a lot of talks about drums and things like that, but some of my most popular videos are those videos like picking the, what's the best ride cymbal videos and best hi-hats and best crash cymbals. Some of you have found me on those videos. But as time goes on, you always get picked on. I still get picked on for some of that stuff, or I've made mistakes. Like I did my Jeff Porcaro video, and I think I had maybe less than 100 subscribers, and now I've got like, I don't know if I have 10,000 views on that or not. I might. I don't really look at it, to be honest. But every once in a while I get questioned about Jeff Porcaro's statement I made, And that day it was what was coming out of my head. That's what Ask Earl Anything is. Ask Earl Anything has been a show where I speak whatever I want to say, and I just talk to the camera. And you guys listen to it. And some of you guys listen to a whole show, and some of you guys only listen to part of the show. So, but I'm not doing as much of that either. And maybe I should get into doing more of that, because, that's fun. So if you think I should do more talking videos, if you want to hear more about my equipment, or you want to hear more about my ideas and thoughts about different types of cymbals and things like that, I'd love to do that. I have a few questions this week that kind of ask me some of my opinions on some of that. So this is usually where you guys get that information, and we'll talk about the questions in a second. But let's first talk about the story behind the gear. So here's the story behind the Pearl fiberglass concert tom kit. Now, first off, I'm a 70s guy. My first drum kit was a blue Vistalite Ludwig kit. I had an 8x12, 9x13, 16x16, 14x22 bass drum with a 5x14 blue Vistalite snare drum. And the first addition to that kit that I bought was an 8 and a 10-inch concert tom, a 5.5x8 and a 6.5x10-inch tom, which are these two toms, by the way. This is an 8, this is a 10. Now, I always liked the sound of concert toms. Matter of fact, I think at one point I had the bottom heads off those drums. I was going for that concert tom kind of sound. I always wanted to have just concert toms. So over my career, I've had these little bouts of having concert toms. At one point I had a set of concert toms from my friend Billy McCabe's kit, who he sold them to me, and I sold them to just a church bought them. And we put them in the church. Then I left that church, and then the church got a new pastor, and the pastor was going to throw the drums to the curb, and one of the elders was a good friend of mine, and he said, hey, we're going to throw these drums out. Do you want them? And I said, yes, keep them there. And I took a whole set of white marine pearl Ludwig drums, 9x13, 10x14, 16x16, 14x24, and then I had a 6, 8, 10, 12 concert tom. That was Billy's concert toms. He had 4 of them. When I bought the 2, he went out and bought 4. He had to beat me. I remember I got the 2 concert toms. He said, I'm going to get more than that. And he got 4 of them. So he had 4 concert toms. And Billy and I in high school used to go down to each other's house and play drums and hang out and stuff. So I had that kit for about, I don't know, probably had that kit for about 7, 8 years. I eventually sold off the main kit. Then I sold off the concert toms. And that's a long story. A lot of equipment that's come through my hands. And then I didn't have any concert toms for a while. And then one day, when I told the story about the DMR custom snare drum, the last Ask Earl Anything, I believe. And the day I met Dan at DMR Custom Drums, I walked in his store and Dan had this set of white pearl fiberglass concert toms. They weren't pearl finish, they were a white gloss finish. And all the drums were white gloss. And the only problem with them was the white gloss finish was cracking and breaking. So when I got my original set, which was a 10, 13, 14, 15, 16 tom, I traded it for 2 Paiste cymbals. I had 2 Paiste 602, Formula 602 cymbals. One was a 19-inch crash, and the other one was a 20-inch medium ride. And those 2 cymbals I traded to him to sell on eBay, and I took a 10-inch tom, a 13, 14, 15, 16 toms on stands. The 10 didn't have a stand. He gave me a rims mount with it. And that was the original toms. And then one day I was on eBay and I bought an 8 and another 10-inch tom on eBay for $40. Now, the problem was I didn't like the finish on them, and it was falling off, and one was really ripped really bad, and I started playing with the finish, and I pulled the finish off, and I realized how easy it came off, and it left these toms looking like fiberglass. Now, if you look at Hal Blaine's Monster Kit, it's Blamere drums, but they're fiberglass. There's no wrap on them. And when I went to Nashville and did a record in 1987, I played on a kit of drums at Hummingbird Recording Studios that was owned by session drummer Dennis Holt, who's a Nashville session drummer. He's played on a lot of contemporary Christian music, played on a lot of jingles and other things in country music. And Dennis Holt had a set of Pearl power toms, an 8x10, an 8x8, 10x12, and I think it was a 14x12 tom on rims mounts, double-headed. But they were fiberglass, and he pulled the wrap off. And they look like this too. They had the same fiberglass color to them. So I remembered playing that first Saved by Grace album on those drums, and I said, let me just rip them off all the drums. So I had a perfect finish on the 8 and the 10. They were bought for $40. The finish was perfect, immaculate. But it didn't match the rest of the kit, so I ripped it off. So off came the finish, and that was about, I guess I got these drums in 2008 or 9. Yeah, it was right around 2008 or 9, somewhere in there. And by 2009 or 10, I had ripped off the finish. There's a couple pictures of the kit with the white color on it. Now the kick drum is a Gretsch 14 by 22 inch kick drum that my friend Scott Hazen gave me in a trade with a 16 by 16 Ludwig floor tom, and that ended up being part of a Blue Sparkle Club Day kit, which is another story for another day. But this bass drum had some different lugs on it. They had some Gretsch lugs, it had some Pearl lugs on it, and I thought to myself, I had this Ludwig bass drum that I tossed and I had all the hardware from, and I found out that the Ludwig hardware fit the holes perfectly. So I put all Ludwig hardware on it. So the drum looks like a Ludwig, but if you look inside, it's got the Gretsch silver sealer in it, and the drum sounds like a Gretsch. It just kills. This drum just kills. So that's the kick drum. So the kick drum really is a mismatch. Now, the interesting thing about my mismatch, there was some thought to my process. When I got these concert toms, the original intent was to buy a 12, okay? And I always wanted to buy a 6, and this is another piece that I'll tell you about in a minute. but this is not a Pearl 6-inch tom, as you can tell. But my intention was originally to take the 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, make them double-headed, paint them either white or black. I was going to spray paint. My friend Dan was going to paint them. So they were going to be black, piano black, and they were going to be a Steve Gadd replica kit. Because Steve Gadd's original, 10, 12, 13, 14 kit was a Pearl set of Pearl concert toms with 2 heads put on them. He basically had a drum shop in New York put the bottom heads on them and do the edges. So that was my intention, was to do that. I've never done that. I never spent the money. I kind of lost heart in the project. Matter of fact, the concert toms for years just sat in the corner, stacked up, and I never used them. I had the original Pearl stands. And to be honest with you, I don't like the way the Pearl stands kind of leave the toms close together. So it never really fit right to me. Couldn't make it right. At one point I thought I'm going to just drill holes in it and I'll put different mounts on it. I had some Ludwig mounts. I drilled holes for the Ludwig mounts. If you saw this, there's some holes drilled in it. But that wasn't really making me happy. And then I did a drum cover when I started doing drum covers in 2017 of Do You Know It's Christmas? Do you know it's Christmas time at all? I did that drum cover with the Pearl concert toms. And what I did was I started pulling rims mounts off of things. I had a 16-inch rims mount. I had a 14-inch rims mount. I had nothing for the 15, but I had this Pearl piece that was part of a tom mount. Long story short of it, I jerry-rigged the whole setup. And I don't even think I had it on this rack, even though this rack was probably hanging around. And I did that cover of that song. And then I did a cover of Goodbye to Love by the Carpenters. And I kind of got some good reactions on the concert toms. And I thought, well, I'm going to keep them around. And then over the next couple years, I eventually bought rims mounts. I thought rims mounts would be the way to mount these better. And I bought a 13-inch rims mount, a 15-inch rims mount. I brought the proper 14-inch rims mount. I had the 16-inch rims mount. And then I kept the 8 and the 10 for the stand that I could use periodically. And I really wanted a 6, really bad. I've been looking for a 6 for like 4 years pretty heavily. 6 and a 12. And then every time I'd see one, it'd be like $250. And I'm going, I'm not spending $250. I spent nothing on the toms. I traded 2 cymbals that I didn't want. And $40 for the concert toms, and I got a stand. And I said to myself, there's no way that I'm going to spend $250 on a 6-inch tom. So finally, this was about a month ago, I was on eBay one day and I was looking at octobons. I look at the octobons occasionally. And I was looking at fiberglass drums, and I think it was fiberglass drums, but this octobon showed up. And it was a 6x11 Tama octobon. And it was $85, buy it now. And I looked at it, and I put it on the watch list, and I went back and I looked at it, and I said, you know what? I don't think I'm going to find a 6-inch tom for less than $85. So I bought it. And all total was under $100 with shipping and everything. And I bought it. And I immediately put the Pearl tom mount on it to go on the clip. So now I got a 6 and an 8. Matter of fact, it's reminiscent of Danny Serafin's white Slingerland kit where he had the extended 6-inch tom. So I kind of thought that was kind of cool. And it's always been my thing to kind of have the Danny Serafin had this really cool concert tom kit, Slingerland concert tom kit, which was another one of those reasons why I wanted a concert tom kit. But when all said and done, there's nothing like the versatility of 2-headed drums. Concert tom is a one-trick pony. I mean, they're a one-trick pony. They have a certain sound to them. Now, they sound best when you mute, when you put mutes on them. Some of you guys really hate me for that. I get a lot of negative comments about my concert toms about why so much tape and why do you put tape on it? But truthfully, the sound of the 70s was tape. Sorry. If that's the sound, it makes it work. I will tell you, when you mic them from underneath, they sound great. But if I'm using all these toms together, I don't have enough mics. I mean, unless I bring all my mics from my main kit. And my thing about my studio is my main kit stays my main kit. Every once in a while, I'll bring the concert toms in there. I've done some videos with the concert toms on the main kit. That's fun. But this room gets 8 mics. That's it. That's all it gets. Kick, snare, 2 overheads, and 4 tom mics. That's all I have space for on my snake, and that's all I'm going to put in here. And that's the way it's going to be. So if I go to a smaller kit, you'll see me put the tom mics inside the toms. But for the most part, I don't think I need the Canon effect. They do sound very cool, though, that way. I have a couple videos recent where I've done it, mic'd them underneath. I think one was a Steely Dan. I don't know if it was Black Cow. It might have been Black Cow I did that way. Deacon Blues, I think I did on the other kit. Anyhow, I've done too many videos. That's the problem. But that's the story behind the Pearl fiberglass kit. I really enjoy pulling this kit out. It sounds right for 70s covers and 60s covers, and I have a lot of fun with it. It'd be kind of fun to do some progressive tunes on, like some, you know, I don't know, Kansas or, I don't know. I've used them for other things. I've done some Doobie Brothers on them. I've done some Journey on them. So the Concert Tom kit is versatile, so I have fun with this. If I want extra toms, I bring these drums in, even though that kit's got 6 toms, so I have enough toms for that kit too as well. So, but that's my story about the Pearl fiberglass concert toms. So anyhow, let's talk Ask Earl Anything questions. The first question comes from Mark Zinker, and he says, "Hi Earl, stupid question." No questions are stupid, Mark. "Do those acoustic squares on your walls really work? I'm in a very small room and was wondering if they do anything. I'll never be recording anything." So I think you wanted to buy the acoustic tiles that are found on in the other room, the foam acoustic tiles you see on my walls. Those are what I call sound absorption tiles, and they're designed to make the room sound a little bit better. I use sound absorption in here because if you look on my walls in my videos, I've got a mattress over here, and I've got some thick blankets over here hanging up along the bookshelves. And I've got this big Chase lounge sitting here, which is just a big bass trap. Rooms don't sound good unless you have some sound absorption in them, especially if they're cinder block. And this is a cinder block garage. So this sounds really boomy and disgusting. Actually, I do everything I can to make this room sound as good as I can make it sound, other than putting permanent fixtures on the walls. I haven't really done that, but I have thought about it. So that's the only purpose of them. They're not soundproofing. If you want to do soundproofing for a studio, you have to build a wall inside a wall. So you basically take your cinder block walls, you build another wall about probably 3 to 6 inches away from the wall. You make it a double thick wall, you put insulation in it and sheetrock on both sides, and then all of a sudden you'd have a soundproof room, a room inside a room. And I live on the end of a street on a canal, not a waterway canal with boats, and I rarely get trucks down here that give me the noise that you would get if you were sitting like right on a roadway where lots of cars come by. So I've never found the need to do that. Plus my neighbors don't really care when I play drums, and I don't play drums too late at night, and nobody's ever complained about my drumming. So that's the purpose of those panels, is sound absorption, and that's it only. So, but thanks for the question. Now, my friend Pat O'Donnell asked me a silly question. I'm not going to take it serious, Pat, but I know where you're going. He said, "I thought you might be interested. Would you be interested in training one of your solid shell snare drums for a vintage Kent or Blue Sparkle Sears brand?" And of course, the answer to that question is no. But I do get people that ask me questions quite often to trade stuff. You know who you are, guys out there. I am willing to trade things if the trade makes sense. And probably because I am who I am, I rarely trade things that I don't think it's an equal deal or better deal for me, something I want. Like, you could question my Pearl Concert Tom trade with my friend Dan, but he sold those drums, he sold those cymbals for probably around $300, okay? I could have got $300 for selling them myself. But did I want to go talk him down on those concert toms? I didn't. So it was a good trade. He won and I won. So trade's got to be something that you both win on. And I will not be winning if I'm getting a Sears Blue Sparkle circa 1960s Japan, which is probably really a Pearl or a Yoshino Tama snare drum before the name was on those drums. That's what Sears snare drums were back in those days. So I probably would make the trade for a Noble Cooley or even my DMR solid walnut shell. But thanks for the question, Pat. My next question comes from Spiro Drums. And Spiro asked me, I see you like snare drums. Yes, I do. I have plenty of them. We were talking about rims and thicknesses. Can you talk about, I think he wanted me to ask, he says, can we talk about rims and thicknesses? Even the difference between brands of rims. Anyway, this is great here to hear you talk about snares. He also added on, anything about snares is great, like plies, wood, species, overseas maple, Canadian, Michigan maple, naked brass, chrome nickel brass, 8 lugs, 10 lugs. Well, I do have a YouTube on my snare drums. If you want to see that, Spiro, I will tell you that. So check that out. One on my solid shell snare drums, one where I kind of play different snare drums. I have in my snare drum collection everything from a 10x14 marching snare drum all the way down to a 3.5 by 13 piccolo snare drum. That's really my son-in-law's, but he never used it, so it sits on my shelf. It's in my studio more than it's at his house. But I have all kinds of drums. Let me just say this. These are probably the 1.6 millimeter rims. These are your traditional die-cast rims from the 70s. They're lightweight. They do bend. On snare drums, they have the potential to bend it seriously and break. I broke a rim on an old Ludwig. On my first Ludwig Vistalite snare drum, I broke the rim from rim shotting it. Most of the rims today that are made by the pro level drums are 2.3 millimeter rims. Even the Ludwigs today, they're a little bit thicker. They're designed to take the beating. I think the 1.6 mils don't take the beating as well. On my Black Beauty, I believe it's a 2.3 millimeter rim. Now, there's other metal rims to think about. Die-cast hoops is one of them. All my Gretsch drums have die-cast hoops on it. Many of my snare drums have die-cast hoops. I'm a big fan of die-cast hoops, especially on Gretsch drums. That's the sound of Gretsch drums, is die-cast hoops. I don't think you need die-cast hoops on these concert toms, to be honest. So you're going to get a more open sound if you're using triple flange versus die-cast. Die-cast is a little bit more controlled, can even seem a little more choked. On my 7x14 DMR solid walnut snare drum, I had it built with die-cast rims. I've recently put straight edge double flange rims on it that are kind of like 2.3 millimeter steel. And that drum just sounds so much more open because I don't have the die-cast on it. Other drums, the die-cast sound really good. Matter of fact, on this Black Beauty here, I don't have die-cast today, but I've had die-cast on this drum, and it sounds great with die-cast hoops. Matter of fact, if you look at the Kenny Arnoff snare drum by Tama, which is based on a Ludwig Black Beauty, that drum has got a top rim of a die-cast and a bottom rim of a triple flange. Because that's what a lot of guys would do with Black Beauties. They would basically get a Black Beauty and then they'd switch the rim out to a die-cast top rim to get a different sound. So die-casts are going to give you a different sound, and it's going to be different than a triple flange sound. So if you want a different sound, that's one way to change things, is have a couple different rims. I have some extra die-cast rims. I have some extra triple flange rims. I occasionally change things out. Right now, my 8 lug die-cast rims from my solid shell drum is on my Acrolite. I have a friend of mine gave me the Acrolite snare drum, my friend Ken. He found it at the Salvation Army. I think he paid 20 bucks for it. He said, I have 4 of these. Here, have one. You don't have one, so I have one. So I said, okay. I refuse a snare drum. Not me, you know. It was really dirty. It was really messy. I cleaned it all up, did that thing to it. And then I put die-cast rims on it. The drum's got a real crank to it. So it's really got that superphonic sound with the die-cast rims on it. So die-cast rims are really cool. They're nice to have. I like all different kinds of sounds, so you have all different kinds of rims for different situations. When it comes to toms, I think certain drums sound a certain way because they don't have die-cast. Like Ludwig drums sound like Ludwig drums because they're not die-cast rims. But Gretsch drums would never be Gretsch drums. If we're talking about U.S. customs, would not be Gretsch drums without the die-cast rims. Now, the Brooklyn series has got a different thing. They got the 302 rims, which are kind of a straight edge rim, kind of cool. It's different than my vintage Gretsch. They're different. So it all depends on what you're going for. But I think there's so much here to talk about. I have probably 3 or 4 videos, and I probably got 10 or 15 videos on Ask Earl Anything where I talk about snare drums. That seems to be a very popular question, Spiro. So I'm going to ask you to check that out unless you ask me a specific question, which makes it easier, because if I have to talk about everything, it becomes much harder. All right, my next question is from Just Ate Too Much. That's what it's called. Just Ate, number 8, Too Much. How would you compare new beats to Peisty 2002s? I would love your opinion. I had a pair of 2002s back in the day. Should have never let them go. All right, I will say it this way. I think new beats are classic hi-hat cymbals. I have a set of new beats, 14s. I've had a couple sets of new beat hi-hats in my career. The set I have now are 1979 vintage hollow logo. They are beautiful hi-hat cymbals. I love them. I will not get rid of those hi-hat cymbals. I bought them for $100. Let me say something about the B8 Peisty sound. I don't have a set of 2002s. If I could buy an old set of 2002s, I would want a set with the sound edge. That's what I've been looking for. So if I ever get a set of 2002s, they will have sound edge on them. I may even just buy a bottom sound edge. I have the 505s, which are the Poor Man 2002s from 1984, and they are beautiful cymbals. So I imagine the 2002s might just have a little bit more brightness to them. If they had the sound edge, they'd have a little more cut to them because the sound edge does that to it. And I think they are different than the new beats, but they are beautiful cymbals. And I think Peisties tend to sit in the mix differently than Zildjians, but new beats, because of the weight difference, the heavy bottom, the lighter top, I think they have become a standard sound in music. Anybody that's a Zildjian player has probably played a set of new beats. They are beautiful cymbals. I think comparatively wise, they both are beautiful cymbals. I think you should have one of each, to be honest. So here's what I said to you on the short answer is I think they're both great hi-hats. I think the 2002s are a little crisper and cut through. That if that's what you want, I'll talk about the question in greater detail. So my new beats are a little darker, but they're not super dark. They're definitely not as dark as my current church cymbals, which are my 14-inch Caropes. Leandro, you need to give me a call. If you're watching this show, Leandro, we need to start working on your project. Okay. Leandro lives in Miami and he wants to start doing a recording project. So if you watch this, Leandro, you heard me call you. Anyhow, that's about all I can say about those. I think 2002s are great. By the way, if I can get another 18-inch 2002 thin crash, I'd love to get one to go with my 16. I love my giant beats, thin crashes. This is a thin crash. This is a multi. Love my giant beats. Love my giant beat hats. But 2002s are some pretty cymbals, man. They are definitely pretty. All right, and my last question comes from Bill Morehouse, faithful drummer who asked, maybe it's not my last question. Actually, it's my second last question. Faithful guy, he follows me on Instagram mostly, but every once in a while he watches Ask Earl Anything out here in YouTube land. He said, what is the purpose of 2 throw-offs on a snare drum? And I believe he's talking about the Dave Weckl 2 throw-off snare drum, which my friend Pat O'Donnell has one of those, I believe. What's the purpose of it? So let me tell you, the first time I ever saw a 2 throw-off snare drum, it was on a marching snare drum. It was on a premier marching snare drum done for pipe drummers, pipe band drummers. Pipe is bagpipes and drums in Scotland. And those drummers have a very high-pitched, almost piccolo-like tight top snare head. Matter of fact, today's DCI are that tight now. And the reason for that other snare was on the bottom of the top head. They would have a snare across it. You push it up and it would make it even more snarey. That was the first time I ever saw two snares. So it was to get more snares out of the top head, you had it on the top head. So top head snare and a bottom head snare. Now, what was Weckl doing putting two snares? I think what he wanted is super crisp, or he wanted to have one that was a little looser for certain songs and one that was a little tighter for other songs, depending on the song he was playing. Or maybe he wanted to sometimes put them both together to get a certain kind of different vibe, to have three different snare sounds. I find it to be a little obsessive. DW has built a snare throw-off that has three positions. I think that's a better way to do it. Use one set of snares with three positions, but Dave Weckl wanted a drum with two snares on it, and he's got it. So I've never, ever thought about buying the Dave Weckl drum. I have some signature snare drums. I have an Omar Hakim, and I've got a Steve Jordan. If I could find a Paul Lime or Manu Cachet Yamaha signature, I would buy those because they are both brass drums. And Paul Lime sounds more like a Slingerland brass, and the Manu's more like a Black Beauty. And of course, if I could get a Steve Gadd snare drum, one of the Steve Gadd steel drums, 14-inch, 5.5 by 14, I'd love to get one of those drums. But the Weckl drum with the two throws never did anything for me, so I never wanted to buy it. But I think that's what it's for. It's to get three distinct different snare sounds. Dave has a way of playing. He's a creative guy. It's also on a 13-inch drum, which that's a whole nother story of it. I mean, 13-inch drums got a certain sound. I think my Steve Jordan's got a really great sound, but the Steve Jordan, again, is deeper, 6.5 by 13. So you can get that really deep thing out of it, or you can crank it up, get the higher thing out of it. Omar's got the crack and a nice mid-range sound. I'm telling you, different snare drums for different occasions. That's what it's all about, man. That's totally it. So I hope that answers your question, Bill. And my last question comes from TTSSF-TGSGG. Very simple question. It was on my Ask Earl Anything about tape on the cymbals and time signatures. He said, do you think if you were to put tape on an SBR Sabian cymbal, it would sound better? Interesting question. I think when you put tape on a cymbal, the only thing it does is it mutes the cymbal and makes the cymbal sound like this. That's what tape does. It brings the ping out. So if I wanted to get more ping out of this, I would put tape on it and it would mute it. Because I don't like the spread. Tape, spread. So the reason we put tape on it was it cut a little bit of that length or decay. You wanted more decay or you wanted some spread on it. You took the tape off if you didn't want the spread. The guy who's made tape on the cymbals famous, as far as I'm concerned, one of the guys I first saw do it and still does it today, is Steve Gadd. My friend Mike Fasano has been doing some tech work for Steve Gadd in the last few months since the COVID. And I've actually got some pictures of Steve's cymbals. If I get really creative, maybe I'll put them in right here. This would be the place to insert pictures of Steve's cymbals. Steve has got a couple really classic cymbals. One is a orchestral cymbal. I think it's a medium light. I don't have the picture, so I'm not looking at it. But it's a Zildjian orchestral selection cymbal. And it's not a suspended. I think it's medium light. And he has a tendency to put tape on the bottom of that cymbal. He also has a Constantinople, and that I think is also a medium light for some reason, or a light. And that Constantinople's over here, and it's got some tape on it. So he's the guy who likes to put lots of tape on it. I saw him do it a long time ago, and I've done it on some of my cymbals. I think in that episode I was talking about my Sabian ride cymbal where I put tape on it. I even showed it in the video. I think I watched this video. So if you want to ping your dryer sound, you go for that. But the Steve Gadd cymbal setup, he's the guy that kind of made that famous. Now, a lot of guys have done it, don't get me wrong. It's not an original Steve Gadd thing. I'm sure he saw some other drummer do this, but it's one of his things he likes to do. So, anyhow, that's it for Ask Earl Anything. This is the show where your questions make the show. If I don't have questions, I don't have a show. I hope you enjoyed my little story about the concert toms and everything. One last thing. I saved it for the end. You know, this is after the election in the United States, and there still is not a president. I'm not going to get political here and tell you what my thoughts are on that aspect of it, but all I can say to all of you is just remember that in the scheme of things, at least from where I sit, I can't allow myself to get all worked up about this whole thing. So, that's all I can say about it. So I trust God in my life. I've talked about that before on the show. And I will trust that whatever happens, we will make it through. This country will survive even this. So we've survived a lot of bad presidents, a lot of good presidents. And we've survived a lot of crooked politicians and a lot of good politicians. And all I can tell you is, if you're stressing out over where the world's at today, I understand your feeling. There's that definite feeling this year. 2020, please let it end. I cannot wait for 2020 to end. It has been a tough, I've had a tough time since my son passed. It's been very tough. But every day I get up, I thank God for breath. I thank God for sunshine. I thank God for work and a job and my children that I do have and my grandchildren that I do have and my family that I do have and my wife who I go to sleep every night next to in bed. And I live in a place of gratefulness, and that's how I get through life. So all I can tell you is, if you're stressing out over all that stuff, the best place to be is to lay it down when you realize that it's not worth stressing out. So anyhow, I may even cut that. I don't know. Thanks for watching the show. You guys have a great day. Remember, ask questions. I'll talk to you next time. Bye.